Hello, and welcome to the Project Good podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Hilton. Project Good is a social impact podcast interviewing experts and advocates about the pressing problems that we face globally and hearing how they suggest we move forward in the future. The Project Good podcast is brought to you by Project Good Work. The goal of this podcast is to inspire people and organizations to develop a mindset that can move others to positive action regarding the complex social issues facing people on the planet. For June, we're focusing on the crisis of masculinity and fatherhood. Today I have the pleasure of interviewing Derek David Bryant, children's entertainer, author, speaker, and fatherhood advocate. Mr. Bryant is a devoted husband, father, and entrepreneur. He's a noted fatherhood advocate and works as a fatherhood engagement coordinator with Community Action of Central Texas. Mr. Bryant has traveled the nation encouraging fathers and families. He's the author of the books And David Danced with All His Might and My Father Works Hard. Let's get into the interview. First, let me introduce our guest, Derek David Bryant, fatherhood advocate, author, and speaker. Mr. Bryant has spent over 15 years helping families reach their full potential by encouraging the involvement of fathers in their families. Mr. Bryant's company, Bryant Enterprises, offers support groups, training, and resources to support men who want to develop their skills and knowledge as fathers. Mr. Bryant works to show that with a bit of guidance, most men can grow to be awesome fathers. Welcome, Derek.
Thank you.
So before we get into the questions, what inspired you to get involved with helping young men become better fathers?
Well, I got started I have a love for working with children. I believe children they're amazing. Like Whitney Houston said, I believe the children are our future. And so no one impacts our children like our parents, and more particularly our fathers. And so I'm very passionate about men being men and fathers standing up and being what the children need them for it to be. So in working with children, I want to make sure that we're impacting those who influence our children. And that's what led me to have really a passion about working with men.
Okay, great. Yeah, definitely. I think since we had this 2020 pandemic, it's really changed the perspective of life. And also, obviously, since a lot of parents had to do a combination of work and school and everything at home, it really started highlighting how important parents are. So this is definitely timely, and to have someone that is focused on that is wonderful. So one of the things that I've been researching and talking to a lot of people about, and also it's been in the news before, is that a lot of people feel that masculinity is in trouble today. Do you think that masculinity is in trouble today?
Yes, I do. I feel that it is in trouble today, just because, what is being put out there in the media, through our music, through print, news, and so forth. I'm a believer of, you shall become what you behold. So many of the manhood, like the themes in the music is negative. Things that we see on TV, from even the music like hip hop to country to rock, is glorifying the selfishness, the false images of masculinity. So also about drugs and getting money and the pimp culture. Hey, I want to be a pimp, that kind of thing. And so if these young boys grow up seeing a skewed image of what manhood is, then it translates to our society, to our culture. And then we grow up, rather than being on target, we grow up off target, off with a misconception of what masculinity is. So I believe there is that masculinity in general is in trouble.
Okay, what would you define as healthy masculinity?
Healthy masculinity, I feel, is a man who understands who he is, a man who understands his assignment. For example, as men, it's important that we take care of ourselves. And so when we understand our assignment as men and what that is, we also understand that, look, if we love our family, we need to be around as long as possible to be the best that we can be. And sometimes that means taking care of us. It's like the old adage, if a plane is going down, And on a plane, and the oxygen mask, it comes down. You want to make sure that you take care of yourself first, so then you can turn to your neighbor, your child, your wife, your partner, and help them. And so when we as men are able to realize, one, might have stressors in life, and so we have to deal with that. We have to make sure that we're healthy, eating right, making sure that we're dealing with our emotions, the trauma that goes on with just being a man in general, being a father in general. A lot of times we push that aside and we push it down. It's like, stuff it down, way down, right? And we're taught real men don't cry, real men don't deal with emotions. But healthy masculinity, we understand this. We understand I need to process some things so I can be healthy, so I can deal with these emotions, so I can be the best version of me that I can be for my children, for my family, and for my community.
I guess one of the questions, as you were mentioning, you talk about emotions. One of the biggest things right now, with everything that's going on in society, obviously, I'm sure you've noticed there's the big feminist push.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the, along with the big feminist push, there's this, I guess for lack of better terms, kind of being kind of neutral, neutral in terms of gender, neutral in terms of like, how you should process emotions. And so, one of the things that I think that I've seen is that there's this confusion factor of, what you're supposed to be, like necessarily, maybe you come out as a man or a woman, but now society has put you into, I guess, this thing of neutral, like like even picking a side has become, problematic. And so where, I guess, are men supposed to lean to, or how do they deal with all of these new kind of I guess definitions of what it is to be a man? I guess how should they deal with these things, or who should they lean on in order to start defining who they are as a man?
Very good question. I think, a lot of times in our society, we tend to try to be so politically correct that we often err, and we try to please everybody until we're not really defining who we are, and not accepting, these gender roles that we've had since God created Adam and Eve. And so some things that I feel are people we can turn to. One is our Father, the Father that we had. Now, everyone has a father, whether dad was there or not. You have a father, whether you knew your father or not, you still have a father. And so as men, we tend to want to look back into, one, saying, I want to be just like my daddy, or two, you know what, I don't want to be like him because he was no good, or maybe even I don't know who he is. So wanting to look at our father to kind of say, tell me who I am. Who am I, Father? Where's my identity? Where does my identity lie? And so we look to our Father to get that affirmation. And when dad's not there, or maybe dad, he doesn't give it. Why? Because his dad didn't give it to him. And then his dad didn't give it to him. And it's the cycle of having these men step into manhood when they don't even know what manhood looks like. And so it's important that as a society that we affirm, yes, it is okay to be a man. It is okay to be a woman. These are the roles. Biologically, this is who I was born to be. And so knowing what that looks like, and then seeing, okay, what is manhood, and how is that demonstrated? What is the correct example? For example, even in my own family, my dad is an amazing father. Growing up, he was what I would call, he was there, but in some instances, he was absent. He was physically there, but emotionally absent. Why? Because his dad was the same way. My grandfather was raised by a pimp on the streets of Chicago, Illinois. That was kind of his mentor. So imagine my father being raised by someone who was raised by a pimp. He didn't get all the warmth that maybe my father should have got. They didn't have those talks about puberty, about sex, about just being a decent man. My grandfather did what he needed to do. He did his best. And in turn, my father did his best. But when you're looking at Dad, tell me who I am. A lot of times, fathers and men are trying to be the best that they can be. But at some point, we have to break the cycle. So we look at the good and the bad. And when you focus on the gender neutrality, it's like, okay, no, for I am a male by birth, and I'm choosing who I need to be based off what my family has taught me. And so, to answer your question, I think we look at our fathers or our surrogate fathers, the substitute fathers, the pastors, the coaches, even like men I grew up watching on TV, and Heathcliff Huxtable, Bill Cosby, mm-hmm. right? These role models that we try to emulate. So that's what I think that we can find our norm in, and our identity is going back to the father.
Okay. I guess one of the things that comes up now, I'm going to do kind of a two-part question for you.
Sure.
One going kind of, be the devil's advocate, and then one be the angel kind of. So right now, the biggest complaint in society, or, well, I guess there's a lot of big complaints, but when it comes to this topic, is about toxic masculinity. What would you say would be considered toxic masculinity?
Toxic masculinity is, I would say, maybe traits or characteristics that are poisonous to the idea of what a man should be. And so as we walk out these ideas, some examples could be, that men think women are no good except for sex, or women are sex objects. That is an erroneous line of thinking. That is toxic. Children might think about our kids. Hey, children are meant to be seen, not heard. I understand the concept, but that is also toxic as well. Things like it's okay to abuse my wife or kids. They're my property. Again, toxic. This machismo, macho attitude, toxic. It's okay to drink every night until I pass out drunk. Toxic. It's okay for men to be involved in pornography and all this stuff. Toxic ideas. And so when I define toxic masculinity, it's these traits, this idea, the characteristics that are poisonous to a man and those around him. Those around him could be his wife, his children, or those who he has a relationship with. Because sometimes people are watching on the outside. It might be the next door neighbor who doesn't have a father, yet he's watching this dad who's with his family. And because he watches his father, he thinks that's what manhood looks like when he's watching a toxic man walk out these characteristics. So that's what I would say is poisonous ideas and traits about manhood.
Okay. And now on the other side, this is kind of going, and this statement itself has even become, I would say, controversial. Even though in the past I would have thought it was a simple statement, it has become a little bit controversial, is what does it mean to be a good man?
But to be a good man, I think, one, you have to have a good heart. I guess a man who takes responsibilities for his actions, either positive or negative, not shifting the blame, but saying, look, hey, that was me. I did it, and I accept responsibility. Again, if it's positive or negative. Also, a good man is somebody who wants good things to happen for his family, for those in and around his sphere of influence, who treats people like the old adage says, treat people like you want to be treated, the golden rule. A good man, he emulates that. That is, he treats people the way he wants to be treated. He knows that, look, you reap what you sow. So, and also I believe a good man, he's intentional about what he does, because when you're a good man, people are going to flock to you. It's like the Bible says, a good name is to be chosen rather than riches and gold. So when you have a good name, when you're a good person, people are going to see it, and they're going to want to flock to you or want to be around you. And so a good man is also intentional and realizes that because of the nature of who he is, he has other people watching him, and he wants to make sure that he's leading a good example.
Okay, one of the things that I wanted to bring up, I'm going to just read a little bit of statistics of what is going on out there for those that don't know. what has been coming up about the masculinity crisis is that right now, in when it comes to the school years, boys are currently being outperformed by women. In most colleges, more women are starting to attend more colleges than women, and women's education attainment is increasingly lagging behind. In regards to the United States, men commit 90% of homicides in the United States and represent 77% of homicide victims. The group of men are the most at risk of being victimized by violent crime. They're 3.5 times more likely than women to commit suicide. And this has been going on for a long time. A lot of people already know that men tend to live shorter than women. And then one of the other things that is happening, and I don't know if it's going to increase. Everything, of course, has become unpredictable about how the future is going to be after this pandemic. But with technology and things changing rapidly in society, most of the type of jobs or professions are leaning more and more towards a reliance on social interactions and social intelligence. And historically, and this would probably get me in trouble because people would be like, no, these days, but historically, social intelligence was more of on a feminine side predominantly than it was predominantly male before. And so one of the things that is happening to men is economically, they are experiencing extreme stresses. And in some cases that they used to be a good amount breadwinners, it's becoming less and less, and women are becoming more dominant in the workplace because of the changes of how work has changed to be more social, emotional intelligence type of work. And so with that, I guess how would you say that men can cope with these changing nuances out in the world economically?
I would say, men are flexible. We tend to, I guess, be able to rebound and get back up when we have something worth fighting for. So I would challenge men, what is their why? Why are they waking up every morning to go to work? What is their motivation? Is it, I want to save up enough money to get this brand new car? Is it, I want to be the best father for my children? Is it, hey, I just need to wake up, to go to work so I can barely pay the bills so our family can survive, so we can start all over again? So I would ask men to understand their why, because their why will drive their passion. Their why will help motivate them. So when you're looking at some of the economic factors and women rising to the forefront because of the social intelligence and so forth, and just like some of the stats you mentioned, I would say, okay, why do you want to do it, right? Why do you want to rise up? What is your why? And when you understand that, okay, let's go out and get it. Let's go out and grind. Let's go out and be who you've been called to be. And so that might mean taking some evening classes. That might mean, doing whatever it needs to do so you can get ahead, and also understanding the role. In my household for quite some time, my wife was making more than me for a while because her education, as you mentioned, she had more education than I did. She graduated with 2 degrees, and at that point I hadn't graduated college yet. And so having to understand the role, it's okay to have a wife who makes more than you, and that doesn't deteriorate or it's not a hit against your manhood. It's whatever works for you and your family. You are both are bringing your role, you're bringing your resources, you're bringing your talents, your time, and coming together to make a family. And so we can't let these stereotypical ideas that was around in the 50s, 60s, 30s, 40s for various reasons. We have to make sure that we're parenting and that we're walking in a time of today's generation with some of these ideologies. And so it's whatever works best for the family. So I would tell that dad, that man, it's okay. It's okay. Understand your why. And if your why is strong enough, you're going to find ways to make it work. Working 2 jobs, working 3 jobs, at the same time, still balancing and understanding that you're needed for your family. If that father needs to get an extra job or needs to go to class, go back to school at night while he's working overnight or while he's working during the day, he has to understand it's only for a season. These seasonal, temporary struggles or these temporary, things that you add on your plate is only for a season because he understands his why and he knows where he wants to go. So if men can have a goal and if they can understand their why, I think that can help them in the overall scheme of things, seeing things a little bit clearer.
Okay, that sounds exactly what I've heard is that you definitely you need to have a goal and be able to be pushing for something as your inner motivation.
Yes.
And so one of the things, of course, is that you mentioned earlier is that kind of what I call the trickle down effect is like the grandparent to the father to to the son. How would you say as a society that we have or are starting to or have been failing our young boys?
Good question. As a society, I believe we're failing our young boys and not presenting the full picture. Not sometimes we as parents let's just talk about parents, for example. Sometimes we try to hold back the truth of the matter in thinking that we're doing our child good when it's really harming them. And so making sure that we're presenting our young boys with the full picture. Understanding, let's just take athletics, for example. A lot of young boys are athletic or they have dreams of becoming professionals, but not everybody's going to make it to the pro level. And so you might start off in Little League wanting to be a pro baseball player, but there's a lot of work that comes into that as well. So understanding, okay, look, this is your goal. This is what you want to do, but here's the real picture, right? Here's what the reality says, not diminishing your goal. So you have to work. At the same time, what is your second plan? What is your other career, or what are you going to do after you retire if you do make it? So making sure that the child is balanced, making sure that our boys are balanced. That's something our society has not always done. We tend to pay attention to one area, be it music, be it sports, and skipping over our boys need to make sure that they're socially and emotionally healthy. A lot of times, again, as I mentioned, we tell our boys, suck it up, don't cry, it's going to be okay. When at the same time, and then later on, when that young boy grows up, we're upset at him because the only way he can experience his emotions is through anger, and then we're penalizing these young men because we, as a society, says men can show anger, but they can't cry. Men can't be emotional, so we're sending mixed messages. So if the society tells the full picture with these young boys, present the accurate story, I think that's one way we can help our young men succeed. Another way is, I think we're failing our young boys is not addressing the double standards in the community. Sometimes it's okay for some people in leadership to treat women a certain way without any consequences. And then someone else, they get the consequence and the hammer comes down on them hard. That's not okay. And we need to address that and speak to that. It might be okay for some people to sell drugs or alcohol or, do whatever, something illegal. And then the other person gets caught, or we're saying it's not right for that person. But person A can do it, So these double standards needs to be addressed, teaching our children right from wrong, teaching our young boys right from wrong, and not only telling them what to do, but showing them what to do. So a lot of times we have these expectations that our young boys should live up to, but one, are the expectations realistic? And two, are they seeing somebody in their community walk out these expectations as well? So not just do as I say, no, it's do what I do as well. So if as a father or as a leader in society, if I'm going to have an expectation for my young boys, then guess what? They need to see me walk that same expectation out as well.
Yes, as you talked about double standards, and I think that is one of the biggest things that 2020 really showed us Do you think that when it comes to masculinity and fatherhood, are there differences, or is it defined differently across racial lines?
Um, I would say yes and no. I think um, across racial lines, a father is a father and a man is a man. I think our children, no matter what they look like, whether they're black, white, blue, green, essentially our children need the same thing from the parents. They need the same thing from their fathers. Culturally, it may look different. Culturally, based off where they're born, who they are, the different cultures within that family, it might look a little different, but our children need the same thing, from their family. So, but I also believe society puts parameters and expectations of what masculinity looks like from a particular race. And so a lot of times the parameters that are put in place are stereotypes, stereotypes that are out there that says this race treats their children a certain way. This race does something different with their children. So in answer to your question, I think along with masculinity and fatherhood, every race, every child needs the same thing from their father, but it's the parameter and the lenses that society puts on those racial constructs that shows the difference.
Okay. So in that, I'm going to take that for that each role in a child's life is different. So what is the key role does a father play in raising a child that's different? Because society has made it seem that it doesn't even matter now if you're the mother or father. Just as somebody's there, it's good enough. But I'm going to lean to the fact that it takes two to make this child, so there has to be a difference.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean, fathers are amazing. Let me backtrack a little bit. Mothers are exceptional. Mothers are amazing. And at the same time, dads and fathers are amazing too. A lot of times our society downplays the roles of fathers or makes fathers feel less than because mothers are celebrated so much. Mom should be celebrated without saying. The father should also be celebrated. When a father is involved in the life of his child is going to do better across most societal issues in life. Children are more likely to make A's and B's in school, more likely to get A's on the standardized tests, less likely to be involved in risky behavior, and the research goes on and on. So one thing that a father does differently than a mother is, for example, he roughhouses. A dad can roughhouse with this child, be it his toddler, be it his young adolescent child, and that's okay, because that teaches limits. That teaches security. If a child takes it too far, dad, trust me, dad's gonna let them know, hey, oh, okay, time out, right? Just inherently that shows the child limits, and it shows, okay, barriers, and I mean, not barriers, but boundaries that I can go with my father. Even with moms and dads, they parent differently in the aspect of fathers tend to let their children explore more, explore the world and their environment around them, whereas mothers will tend to kind of want their children a little bit closer. What I mean by that? Well, let's say that a mother's at a park with her child and talking to the family or talking to somebody else. She's going to want to be kind of close by if that child's on the swing or sliding down the slide. Dad, whereas on the other hand, he'll let the child venture a little bit further. Yeah, he's still watching the child, but he also maybe won't be as fast when the child maybe trips over a rock. He'll walk over to make sure he's okay, but want to make sure that the child is experiencing things as well. So mothers and fathers parent differently. I agree that if dad's not in the picture, the child can, will turn out, hopefully, if the village rallies around the child will be just fine. But when fathers are involved and in the picture, raising their child with mom, that child is going to reach its full potential. I guarantee you. So fathers are important, and they do parent differently. It's like peanut butter and jelly. Mom may have the jelly of the sandwich. Dad may have the peanut butter. It's two different things. When you put it together, it makes a beautiful sandwich. And as a matter of fact, I had one last night. So peanut butter and jelly is good. Mom and dad, the two different ways of parenting, they come together to complement one another so well.
What would you say is the greatest challenge fathers face?
The greatest challenge that fathers face, I would say, if I had the greatest challenge, I would say the perceived depreciation, the depreciating factor of the father, the perceived depreciation factor that the value is not important. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier that, fathers are important, but sometimes society says they're not. For example, I remember going to my daughter. My daughter's now 12 years old, and I've been with my wife for 21 years now. And so I've been there from day one in the prenatal visits, in the doctor's offices and so forth. As I walked into the doctor's offices many times, the doctor would expect the information about how my daughter is doing to come from mom. Mom, how are things going? Mom, are there any new things that we should know about? Mom, what are some things that you're noticing? And yet they ignore the fact that, one, I'm there. They ignore the fact that I'm also a reliable expert on my child. So by their silence or by them not engaging me in conversation, what it's telling me is that I don't matter and that mom is important. Mom is what is who we should rely on. Forget what dad says. Even if dad does say something, mom, what do you think about that? Right? So mom is the expert. Whether fathers realize this or not, it does something to our confidence level. And so by that nature, it's depreciating our value. Same thing with school conferences, parent-teacher conferences. If dad takes time to be off at a parent-teacher conference or back to school night, then include both mom and dad in the conversation. Because because as a father by nature, I've taken off my job to be there. It shows that I care. It shows that I'm very concerned about the education of my child. So include me in the conversation. Pull me in by asking me questions as well. Hey, mom, thank you for that. Dad, what are your thoughts on that, right? Society doesn't do that, it depreciates our value by way, then our confidence as a father is lowered. And when we as a father, as men, when our confidence is lowered, we're not going to step up to do some of the things at home because we don't think we can do it well. Why? Because society says that we don't matter. And then sometimes well-meaning moms, well-meaning grandmas will kind of push us out of the room and say, you know what, you don't need to change a diaper. Go ahead and hang with the men. Go hang with the boys. This is women. We got this. No, I want to be around my child. I want to make sure I'm changing diapers too, right? So we have what's called maternal gatekeeping, meaning if you want to have access to the child, you have to enter through the maternal gate, that you have to come through mom or abuela or the grandma or the auntie, whoever it may be. So those factors right there depreciates the value of the role of the father and the eyesight of the father himself, but also for those around watching. So I think that's one of the greatest challenges that men face.
Yes, as you mentioned that, I started thinking about, I just had a baby last year, and yeah, you're exactly right. Everything is always focused on me. When I go to the doctor's visits and pretty much everything in life. and my husband, everything, he even comes to me sometimes like, oh, what should we do for this? And I'm like, goodness gracious, like, how many times, like, do I have to be like, constantly the person to answer everything?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, no, you're right, and and it happens just so, so not even, you don't have it's happening, subconsciously. You don't even realize all of that stuff, just because, society has just made it, standardized. But yeah, that you bring up a very valid point. And now I guess, I'm going to start including my husband a little bit more.
Good.
Let's see here. One of the other things that I was just impressed by you about is that you help men learn to be good fathers. So I guess just give me some of the ways that you guide men to be good fathers.
Sure. Some of the way that this helping men become good fathers is when the dad can ask himself some questions. The dad saying, what type of father do I want to be, right? Because a lot of times we step into the role of mothering and fathering, and sometimes, to be honest, we may not be prepared. A lot of times people, like my wife and myself, we were wanting a daughter. We had planned for a daughter. We were trying to have a baby, and we experienced miscarriages along the way, but glory to God, we were able to have one. And so sometimes it's a planned pregnancy, sometimes it's not. The point I'm getting at is that we have to ask ourselves, what type of parent do I want to be? So I tell dads, hey dad, what type of father do you want to be? And I have dads think about that, because they think about, well, I want to be involved, or I want to be present, or, they have to actually have an answer, right? And wait for fathers to respond, or I have them write it down. And then I ask them, okay, well, are you currently there, right? If you were to grade yourself from A to F, what grade would you give yourself based off of what you wanted to be? And so I shared that. I shared this with teen fathers one time, and I graded myself. I said, you know what? I want to be a father that's involved, a father that's approachable. That was what I said. But then when I gave myself a grade, I had to be honest, and I gave myself a C, just kind of average. Why? Because sometimes I would be on my phone checking social media, on my phone doing some work, and my daughter would approach me. I would say, hang on, baby girl, I'll be with you in a second. And sometimes I would get back to her, sometimes I wouldn't. But what it showed me was, in my daughter's eyes, maybe my phone and what I was doing was more important than her. So I had to correct that habit, and then be able to, one, put my phone down when she comes to ask me a question, and say, hey, listen, let me finish this real quick. I'll be right with you. And hold myself to that. Be real quick, put it down, and then give my daughter the undivided attention that she deserves. So I ask fathers, what type of father do you want to be? What type of father did you have growing up? Right? Because in order for us to be the best men and fathers, sometimes we have to take a step back and look at our history. Was dad there? Was he not there? What did you like about the way that your father raised you? What could he have done differently? Now, granted, we can, hindsight is 20/20, so we can always look back and find fault. But we have to realize now, as adults, our fathers and our parents did the best they could with what they had. So what are some positive memories that we have about our father? What are some negatives? What did you like about the positive memory? How can you recreate that memory in your life? For example, when I did that with, again, just introspectively making sure that I'm doing that, I remember that my father, he would wake up early in the morning and make us breakfast. The pancakes would be so huge that they were falling off the plate. And sometimes he would make us like oatmeal or malto-meal back in the day, right? And he would fill up the bowl so high it was almost overflowing. But those were great memories. And I had to say, Derek, why are you thinking about that? Why was it such a great memory? Because my dad did it for me. And you know what? When I look further, that was one way that my father told me that he loved me, because he wanted to cook for me. He wanted to make sure I was full. He didn't always say verbally at that time that he loved me, but looking back, those actions showed me that he loved me. So when I tell fathers, look back, what are some positive memories? What did you like about that? How can you recreate some of those memories for your children, right? And also, I asked them, who's mentoring you? Who is your fatherhood mentor? Do you have somebody speaking into your life? I often share with fathers, look, who is your favorite actor? They might say it might be Denzel, right? I might say, who's your favorite athlete? It might be Michael Jordan. Okay, great. I know these two are older references, but still, it works. And I tell them, look, Michael Jordan and Denzel Washington, they both have coaches. Michael Jordan had a great coach in Phil Jackson. Denzel Washington, he has acting coaches. These two were at the top of their game. Denzel still is at the top of their game, but yet they had somebody to speak into their life. What does that say about us as men? We too should also have somebody to speak into our life. So a fatherhood mentor, somebody that we can listen to, that has a little bit more wisdom. And then, Dad, what fatherhood books are you reading? What are you watching? What's the self-help that you're doing? Because let's say that Dad wants to know how to fix his car, that Dad wants to, plan a trip to go somewhere and go from Texas to Michigan. Well, he needs to look up the route. If you want to have a goal in mind, sometimes you want to know how to get there. So, Dad, if your goal is to be the best father you can be, sometimes it helps in researching and studying and putting more into you as you pour out to your children, filling your cup back up. So these are just a few things I share with fathers about how to make sure that we're guiding men to be the best fathers their children need. Why? Because their children, they're worth it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I like having like definitely taking the approach of having a coach or a mentor. One of the things obviously that is happening is that men feel alone. So having somebody that is there with you is an excellent idea, and I think every dad should implement that. Uh, and so, one of the things, though, before jumping into having children, how does someone know that they're ready to be a father? Is that a trick? This is kind of a trick question.
Yeah. How does someone know they're ready to be a dad? Well, it's tough, because I've heard many times, you know what? I'm not ready to be a dad. I'm not ready to be a father. And sometimes you hear that excuse, well, you know what, baby, your dad left because he wasn't ready to be a dad. And so that's a very real valid statement. I think men will know they're ready to be a father when that dad is ready to love someone more than he loves himself. If that dad is ready to love someone, then he loves himself. I think that's a good indicator that he's ready. Because sometimes we can be just, as men, as people in general, but as men, we can be selfish. We can be very idealistic and everything's about me. And especially the age that we live in, it's about me, I this, I that. But, being a man of faith, I refer to a scripture that says that greater love hath no man than this, that he laid down his life for a friend. And so when that father, that man who say, you know what, I'm ready to be a father. Why? Because I can lay down my life for my family, for my child, for my partner, for my girl, for my wife, whoever it might be. Laying down doesn't mean actually dying. It could in some regards, but sacrificing your goals, your dreams, or putting them on hold just for a second, right? It's not about me. For example, are you ready to spend money on diapers and formula or baby clothes versus then get those brand new shoes that just came out, right? Can you able to do that? Are you able to be good with that if you do that, right? Or are you going to have an attitude, man, no. So when dads can be able to love someone more than they love themselves, I think they're on a great track and trajectory into, being the father being a good father for his children.
That's a great answer. What do you think that women can do to support men?
I think women, one can praise men a little bit more. Not saying men are super, men are awesome, but just be genuine about the work that men do. And when I say praise, what I really mean is encouraging us as men, encouraging us as fathers. We don't need the we don't need the patronizing pat on the back. Say, oh, great, Jimmy, good job. No, right? Yes. But in the moment, hey, I like the way you did that. I appreciate you. Man, I know that took a lot for you to do that. I just want to acknowledge that. Oh, well, okay, may catch dad or may catch that man off guard, but he'll really value it when it's genuine. So encouraging and supporting men, I think that's good, for women to do to help support men. I think, now it might be hard, but even with moms, when that father is there, when mom and dad are fathering, women avoid gatekeeping, avoid saying, okay, well, honey, that's not the way I would do it. So your way is wrong. This is the right way because this is the way I'm going to do it. No, if dad is trying, let dad try. Let us try and fail, right? And then also celebrate our failures. I remember when my wife was pregnant, and I wasn't not a great cook now. I'm better, but back then I was horrible. And so I went to our local grocery store, and they had a cooking demonstration going on. And I saw what they were doing in the grocery store. I said, this seems easy enough. Let me cook this for my wife who's pregnant at home, and because I went out to get some things. So as I was fixing things on the stove, I didn't put enough oil in the pan. I was making what's called a fideo, and I ended up burning stuff. And the smoke alarm came on. My wife is in the bedroom trying to rest. She says, honey, is everything okay? I said, yes, babe, go back to sleep. We're fine. At the same time, I'm fanning the smoke detector to get it from, stopping the alarm and so forth. But I failed miserably. My wife was grateful that I tried. Sometimes women, we may not do it the exact way that you would do it. We may not parent the exact way that you would parent, but applaud our effort. At least we're trying. I can recall a time when I was doing my daughter's hair. One of her ponytails was near her ear. The other one was on top of her head. And she was looking... sorry about that. She was looking messed up, but at the same time, the effort was there. I was getting effort. And as long as dad is trying, so allow us to try, allow us to fail, because we can't get better if we're not trying. I would also say, don't treat us like little boys. Don't treat men like little boys. Let us have the space to be men. I would also say, we can't read minds. So if you want us as men to do something, share it with us. That'll help support us, right? Share it with us, so that way we can do better. And be okay. If you ask us for our opinions, be okay with the answer and the opinion that we give, So I think that all that will help support men, and for some of us into stepping in our role. Because get this, a lot of times women may be looking for us to step into our role, but this is going to be a tough statement. But sometimes we're just waiting for women to get out of our role. Okay. So it might be women had to step up traditionally because men were not in place. But if you have a man in your home that's trying to be the man that he needs to be, wife, young lady, Mrs., make sure that you slide over a little bit and stop trying to just make sure that you shift over so dad, man, the husband can step into his role. So allowing us to be the fathers that we need. And then the last thing I want to say, Anne Marie, is allow us as men to show you respect. We hear growing up or in songs that they're disrespected. And I hear it in lyrics. It's horrible. Some of the things that are said in movies, said behind closed doors, said in the music we listen to. But allow us to show you respect as well. Let's say if we're going to open a door for you, I know that women, I know your arms aren't broke. I know you can do it yourself. But allow us to, if a man's going to do that, allow him to do it without getting attitude, because that's one way that we can show respect. Because when we're shut down, I can do this myself. I don't need you to open no door for me. Well, then we stepped out there to show something and get out of our comfort zone, so to speak. But now you're berating us because we try to be respectful. So now I'm going to go back in my shell and I'm going to be introvert like I was before. So those are just a few things. I love women. I love my wife, put it that way. I love women who are out there. Women and men are great people. But I think those are some things that can help in supporting men across our culture.
I've heard a lot of that. It's just a lot of women, they have a tough time now, letting men just be, I guess. Yeah. I'll just end it there. Just be. So I guess to kind of wrap things up, I'll let you kind of do either a two-part kind of a question here. What would you say that men need to be successful, and what makes being a man difficult today?
Okay. What do we as men need to be successful? I would say it's very simple. I would say it's truly just support and encouragement. Support and encouragement. I have a business that, as you mentioned in the intro, I do work for a nonprofit organization, and I also run a business in the evening on the weekends. And the support I get from my wife helps me to be able to be the best I can be, helps me to be able to wear the hats that I wear, because I have her backing, I have her support. When I come home, she understands. I'm not getting fussed at, I'm not getting griped at, and we're making sure that we're intentional about our family time, and that I'm balancing our time as well. So the support I get helps me to be successful. I think every man in every family, mom and dad, husband and wife, can define their own level of success. So whatever that looks like, if society, if your sphere of influence, if your family supports you, I think that man is going to be successful. And also the encouragement, to encourage men when they get down, to encourage fathers when they get down. Hey, you know what? It's all right. I've been through this. It's tough, but you know what? You're going to get through it. You still have breath in your body. You can get back up again. What can you learn from this mistake? I know you made a mistake, but it happens. But what can you learn from this? How can we get back on there and get back out there in the game? So support and encouragement, I think, is very important. And then I think the last question you asked me was about, I think about
what's the difficult part of being a man in today's world? Mm-hmm.
I think the difficult part about being a man in today's world is just the expectations, the expectations that we are, where the bar is set. We set the bar so high, and then we're expected to be perfect. We on social media, we have, we're only show the best parts of ourselves. My family just went on a vacation, and this is what we did. We're showing, okay, this is my child. We're showing the best parts. No one is showing their worst moments on social media. We're all, showing our best parts. So it's that pressure that we're trying to live up to, that we've set. So I think it's trying to be strong, right? It's trying to be strong all the time, and at the same time, we know that's impossible. But we say real men are supposed to be tough. We're supposed to be strong. Not all at all times. Even Superman has a weakness, right? Even Popeye had a weakness. There's times that those superheroes, they get down. So as a society, there's moments that we get down, and it's okay to help unpack the trauma that we go through, or the hurts that we go through, or the stresses we go through, to give us time to talk about it. So one of the greatest challenges, or what's difficult, is trying to be strong at all times when it's impossible. So giving grace for men to be vulnerable, I think that is something that doesn't happen in society. Women can be vulnerable. At the same time, men can be vulnerable too. But if men are vulnerable, then sometimes society sees it as a sign of weakness. It's not. When I'm able to be vulnerable with other men and say, hey, man, I'm hurt, dude, that really shows strength. And so it's difficult to be strong all the time. No one can be strong all the time. Allow us as men the grace to be vulnerable and be okay with that.
I love that answer. Thank you. Thank you, Derek, for your time and insight. If you would like to learn more about Derek, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it the best to go to BryantEnterprises.com?
Yes, ma'am. Bryant-Enterprises.com.
Okay, fantastic. And so if you have a passion for an unserved community, a social justice issue, or simply want to change minds, contact Project Good Work at projectgood.work to start your project of change today. Thank you to our listeners. Thanks for tuning in to Project Good. We're focused on what matters.